If you could design your business from scratch today, knowing everything that you know now, would it look anything like what you're currently running? I asked myself that question and it tickled because for most of us, myself included, the honest answer is no. Not because we failed, but because we built in motion. We said yes under pressure. We added layers to survive or thrive. And somewhere in all of that, we actually stopped designing and we just started managing. And today I'm giving you the 3 questions that change that. So you can go from optimizing to architecting and actually love your business. And so let's get into it. And if this show has been worth your time, or this episode is, my invitation is that you please hit that subscribe button because it's the simplest way to stay connected, to support me, to listen to the episodes. And I can't do this without you. So let's dive into the show. So I want to ask you something, and I want you to actually sit with it before you answer. Here's the question. If you could design your business from scratch today, knowing everything that you know now about yourself, about your clients, about your offer, about what you actually want your life to look like, would it look anything like what you're running right now? I'll take a sip of coffee and I wait. Because when I asked myself that question, it stung a little bit. And the reason is, for most entrepreneurs, the honest answer is no. And I think that's important to acknowledge. And it's also not a failure. That's just what happens when we build in motion. We end up making decisions under pressure. We say yes to things that made sense at the time. We added layers, we made adjustments, we survived hard times. And somewhere in all of that surviving, in all of that adjusting, the business became something that we managed instead of something that we loved. And here's the problem with that. When most entrepreneurs feel stuck or stagnant, they do the same thing. I want you to listen to this. They work harder on what they already have. They optimize, they tweak, they try to squeeze more out of a model that maybe, if we were being honest and answering this question, was never really designed for the life that we dreamed of, or the business that we wanted, or the way that we want to spend our time or spend our days. And there is data and studies to back this up. Over 2/3 of startups and small businesses fail within 10 years. And one of the leading reasons, where they interview all these people, isn't bad work ethic. It's not a bad offer. It's not a bad team. It's misalignment, which is building the wrong thing really well for too long. I want to say that again. Misalignment is building the wrong thing really well for too long. It works. It looks good on paper. It's making money. The team is going, but it's unaligned because of all the layers. And so today I want to talk about the difference between optimizing the business you have and designing the business that you want, because they are 2 completely different activities. And when we confuse them, it ends up costing us. We get sunk cost bias. We end up looking back, and if I just shifted soon, then I wouldn't be in this bucket. And so we need to differentiate between optimizing the business we have or designing the business that we want. So when we think about optimizing, here's what optimizing looks like. You look at your revenue and you ask, how do I get more of this? You look at your team and you ask, how do I get more out of them? You look at your offers and you ask, how do I sell more of these? They're not bad questions, but they are the wrong first question if the model underneath them is broken or misaligned. And I want to define model really quickly. The model is just the way in which you operate your business. You might use webinars to sell. You might have an offer where you get on sales calls. You might be a coach. The model is the mechanism or the process in which you sell your offer. And so those aren't bad questions, but they're the wrong first question if the model that's underneath them isn't the model that you actually want to follow. So I want you to think about optimizing this way. Imagine that you're driving a car and you realize that you're going in the wrong direction. Optimizing is pressing the gas harder, but designing is pulling over, checking the map, and deciding where we actually want to go. And so it's important to understand that we can't optimize our way to the right destination if we're heading in the wrong direction. We cannot optimize our way to the right destination if we're heading in the wrong direction. And so when we do this, it leads to a lot of crappy feelings that are mislabeled. We are told, or we feel, right, as an entrepreneur, that we're exhausted. And we end up feeling exhausted, not sleeping. And it's not because we're lazy. It's actually because we're working incredibly hard on something that was never fully built for ourselves, right? Our offer might not light them up anymore. You might have got it from a coach who said, this is the only way to do it. You might have seen a client selling that way. You might have seen a friend or a peer say, this is the way you have to do it. Or they told you that's how you had to make reels, or that's how you had to do your podcast. And so you end up with all these things that absolutely drain you. The clients drain you. The revenue model requires more than it returns. And instead of stepping back and redesigning, we try harder, which is us pushing the gas, driving in the wrong direction. Found another statistic. Almost half of entrepreneurs, 46%, report struggling with high stress. That is not a wellness problem. That, in my opinion, most of the time is a design problem. And so in order to shift that, in order to change that, we have to go from operating or almost being a victim of the business to architect it. So how does it actually look to stop optimizing, right? And how we're going to remember optimizing is pushing the gas pedal while we're driving in the wrong direction. That is not optimizing. We don't want to do that. We want to start designing, which is pull the car over, look at the map, ask where we want to go, and make adjustments. So the first thing is it starts with a mindset shift. We actually have to take a step back out of the role of the operator, the person that's running the business day to day. And we have to put ourselves into the role of the architect, the person who looks, designs, and creates the blueprint and asks, is this still the building that I want to be in? Because if you think about it, as an entrepreneur, we are so multifaceted. We end up in so many buckets, right? I'm going to do 2 or 3 podcasts today, a couple of coaching calls, build some models, design some customer journeys for my clients to scale, have a couple sales calls for clients, go to an in-person meeting. And I end up in all these roles, which I love, but I'm operating. I'm actually driving the car. But in order for me to be an architect, I have to get out of the car, put it in park, and then look at the map and be like, where am I trying to go to make sure that what I'm doing is actually aligned? So when we think about entrepreneurs, one of the mistakes, and we all fall into this, myself included, is we'll spend about 95% of our time operating and maybe 4 to 5%, if that, thinking architecturally, thinking about the design, thinking about the blueprint. And then we'll get frustrated that nothing is changing, but we're actually not changing the directions. We are just following the directions that we've had harder and faster, and expecting them to change. And so if we want to think about this in a house analogy, you can't redesign the house that you never leave. You might want to renovate the house. They can't renovate it with you sitting on the couch. They can't rip up the floors, take down the ceilings, knock that wall down and do an addition. So you can't redesign the house from the inside. You actually have to step away from it. So when we think about how do we architect instead of how do we operate, we have to understand what architects do that operators don't. And what an architect does is they start with the outcome in mind and they work backward. You will find business book after business book after business book on this, and personal development books. But we start with the end destination in mind. And they work backward. They don't ask questions like, how do I make this better? Right? Because that's the equivalent of pushing the gas pedal in the wrong direction. They ask different questions like, what does the finished version actually look like? And are the actions that I'm taking today actually build me to that place? because that's a completely different conversation. And it's the one that needs to be had, but it's not the popular one because we end up too busy running the thing that we built 3 years ago, 5 years ago, 7 years ago. And this is the first thing that I do with my one-on-one clients. And most of the time it blows their mind. But we have to be willing to design the blueprints. And then if we put a wall up in the wrong place, we have to be willing to take that wall down so that we can put the right one up. And so if you want a practical way to do this, I'm going to give you 3 intentional questions. I have them written down in front of me. 3 intentional questions for you to reflect on to go from operator to architect. And I want to say this. If you know anybody else in your life that this episode lands for, like you're like, oh my God, I see them going through this, or I've been trying to tell them for years. My one ask selfishly is that you share this episode with them. Like actually send them this episode and be like, I need you to listen to this. I need you to answer these 3 questions. Let's do this together. Because if we isolate and we live in an echo chamber, a lot of the times we'll end up keeping ourselves in that same position. Okay. So I'm going to give you 3 practical questions. Okay. This is a framework that you can answer these questions and you can put it into practice instantly. But these questions aren't quick questions. You should never design your dream home on the back of a napkin in 10 minutes and then build it. You should take as much time as possible to design the blueprints of that home and get really clear, because when you build it, it's there forever. Just like I think it was Abe Lincoln, measure twice, cut once. Same thing. These questions deserve real time. Block an hour. Get away from your desk, get away from your office, go sit in nature, go to a coffee shop you've never been to, but answer them honestly and spend sacred time with them. Like, spend as much intentional time for you to justify that they are the most important questions that you could ever ask. Because what comes from them is your dream. It's your forever. So give them the weight that they deserve. So question number 1 is, what does the business I actually want look like? What does the business I actually want look like? And you need to give this texture and specificity. Not the business that you think you want, not the business that looks impressive on Instagram or paper, the one that fits your life, your energy, your values. What are you selling? Who are you serving? What does your week look like? What time are you getting up? What time are you done with the day? How often are you going to the gym? Are you on calls? Do you like not being on calls? How much are you making? And how hard are you working for it? Get specific. Texture. Most people never write this down, and this guides everything. Question 2, what's the gap between that business, so the business from question 1, and the one I'm currently running? What's the gap between that business and the one I'm running? And be honest here. There's no wrong answer, but that clarity and awareness is what lets you bridge that gap. You just have to be honest. So where is what you're building today pointing toward that vision? There's parts that are probably right. And where in your business today are you doing things that are taking you away from it? You have to look at everything. You have to look at your offers, your clients, your team, your revenue model, your schedule, your sleep, your health. And you have to ask yourself, what's aligned? What isn't? This is what we would call a gap analysis. We first get clarity on the outcome, and then we get clarity on the current state. And what we're identifying now is the gap. And until you see the gap clearly, you can't close it or shift it. Which brings us to question number 3. What's one structural change that moves me closer to the answer to question 1? What's one structural change that closes that gap? Not 10 changes, not 8 changes, 1. What is the most important architectural decision that you can make right now? Maybe it's retiring an offer. Maybe it's raising your prices so you can serve fewer clients. Maybe it's building a revenue stream that doesn't require your time in the same way. Maybe for me, it was going from 3 podcasts a week to 2. Maybe for me, it was going from running a group program to one-on-one programs. Maybe for me, it went from doing digital events to bringing them back in person. But you have to pick one structural change. You have to decide it, and then you have to start building toward it. You don't build it overnight, you build toward it. So those are the three questions. And I want to be really, really open with this. And I mean this. I want you to be excited and curious about wanting something different than what you've built. And if you're that person where you're like, I am 100% happy. If you gave me a genie and asked me to design this again, I would do it exactly the same way. I would work the same amount of hours with the same clients, spend my days the same amount of whatever. If that's you, fine. This episode wasn't for you. I've never met anybody like that. And so then I want to address this and give you permission, because a lot of times we feel guilt about this. We feel shame around this. We've built something, people depend on it. We've invested years, so we have sunk cost bias. And the idea of questioning the model almost feels like betrayal of their team, of their clients, of yourself, of your friends, of your coaches. But this is the hard truth. Staying committed to a model that no longer serves you doesn't make you loyal. It makes you stuck. It's pushing the gas pedal in the wrong direction. And a stuck version of you or a misaligned version of you is not good for anyone. Not good for you, your family, your team, your clients, nobody. And so the most responsible thing that you can do for the people depending on you is to build a business that you actually want to be in. That's what makes an entrepreneur last, not just survive, is adaptability, to build something sustainable and meaningful. And so this means that periodically, intentionally, whether alone or with a coach like me, you're going to have to do this 50 more times where you have to stop. You have to look at what you've built. Does those walls match the blueprint? Does that paint color match what I put in the design? Is that sofa the right one that I want to sit on? And then if you don't like it, have the courage to redesign it. Not blow it up, not tear the house down. Just take the furniture out and put new furniture in. Redesign it intentionally and on purpose. And you can only do that after sitting with these questions. And so what I want you to do this week is I want you to spend less time optimizing. Remember, gas pedal, wrong direction, and more time designing. Ask yourself the three questions. Write down the answers, pen to paper, look at the gap, and pick one structural thing to change. You did not start a business to be trapped in it. You started it because you believed you could build something on your terms, which you can because you made the rules. You can change the rules, so that is still available to you. But you have to stop perfecting the blueprint that you outgrew or that somebody else gave you, and you have to start drawing a new one. And so now it is time to stop building for the business that you have and to build for the one that you want. And if I can help you with this, this is why I love coaching. This is why I love one-on-ones. This is why I love my events. Get a hold of me. Get a hold of me. Our email is on our website. There's a contact form on our website. You don't have to do this alone, but I promise you in 2026, this is what you want to be focused on because the market's changing, the world is changing, and whether you change your blueprints or not, the world is going to demand that you do it. So be proactive and do it now so that you can capitalize on this opportunity. So I'm excited. I will see you in the next episode. Remember that relationships will always beat algorithms, and most importantly, the one with yourself. I will see you, or maybe you'll hear me in your earballs, but either way, we're out.